Chuck DeVore is a retired Army intelligence officer, and he joins us right now. Chuck, thank you for joining us. So, first of all, tell us about these strikes that President Trump has launched and how effective they are.
So, Charlie, these strikes were aimed at Iran's ability to close the strait, to harass shipping in the strait. It's also important to understand that this was not a proportionate response. It was a disproportionate response, as it should be. We really knocked the Iranian capability back. Now, we didn't completely eliminate it, but it'll make it a lot easier and a lot safer for the U.S. Navy to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz.
So why is it so difficult to just eliminate their ability to do anything along the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, it's a very large area geographically. Iran is a large country, and presumably the Iranians have radar units and mobile missile units and other stores that are not only buried in underground complexes, but are located in other parts of Iran that they can eventually filter back into the region. Now, I think another huge thing, though, is the dog that didn't bark. Noticeably absent were missiles coming from Iran to Israel. Noticeably absent was Hezbollah in Lebanon. Noticeably absent were the Houthi rebels down in Yemen, or even Hamas. And so the Iran of today is not at all even remarkable, not even close to the power that Iran had at the beginning of the year.
Close the loop on that. Why is that so significant? Meaning that Trump has successfully cut off communications, or that the Houthis and the Hezbollah are afraid to carry out orders given by Iran?
Well, certainly there's some of that, but there's also the long-term effect of that blockade that America has been engaged in. And that, of course, cut off a lot of that hard currency that was going to sustain Hezbollah. And, of course, Israel invaded the southern part of Lebanon. And another thing that I think is quite remarkable, and we're not getting enough attention or credit for, is the American brokered agreement between Israel and Lebanon that essentially leaves Hezbollah as a foreign proxy agent on the outside. Lebanon is finally getting the opportunity to have full sovereignty over their territory. That's good for Lebanon, and it's good for Israel.
Obviously, the markets don't like this, and I think voters don't particularly like this action. Iran doesn't seem to have a whole lot of options on the table except to disrupt the strait. Is that pretty much their only option?
I think at this point it is, outside of irregular actions, for example, trying to assassinate people or doing other terror operations. It's important to note that during the ceasefire period, an enormous number of shipping, both cargo ships and tankers, were able to exit the Gulf and get out and ply their trade. In addition, hundreds of millions of barrels of oil got out of the Gulf as well, and that oil is now flooding the market, which is probably why the price of oil only went up about 10% over the last 2 days.
So we hear reports that Iran and Oman are trying to sort of play a little footsie with the idea of trying to set up some kind of toll system. President Trump, Vice President Vance have made clear that that will not be permissible. Where do you see all of that going?
Yeah, I don't see that as being viable in the long term or even the short term. Obviously, those nations would like to have a way of generating income. Oman does not have a lot in the way of its own natural resources. What they have is position. They sit astride the southern portion of the Strait of Hormuz. The problem, and the reason why this can never be allowed to happen, is the strait is an international waterway. So if you allow Iran and Oman to charge a toll, then you can be guaranteed that the People's Republic of China is going to do that to the Taiwan Strait very quickly.
Right. Given the success that President Trump had getting tankers out under the cover of darkness and under the protection of our warships, even during the blockade, do you feel confident that Iran is not capable of actually shutting down the strait as they've threatened?
Well, certainly a huge part of shutting down the strait is psychological. After the strikes of the last 2 days, their ability to interdict shipping in the Gulf has been significantly degraded. But, they only need to get lucky once for the insurance markets and the people who own these very expensive ships to say, I don't think it's worth the risk.
Yeah, so if you're a private oil tanker captain in the Gulf right now, are you afraid to go through the strait?
Well, certainly if you're going to go with the protection of the U.S. Navy, you're probably going to be in pretty good hands. Other than that, though, I don't think I'd like to risk it by myself.
Yeah, indeed. Chuck DeVore, thank you so much for joining us. DeVore, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Charlie.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.